So yeah, we're gonna go over parameters, requests, and sessions. Basically, parameters are what PHP uses as the get variable. So when you think of get, the get method, and then also the URL parameters that you see on the address bar. So the easiest way to get dynamic data is using the URL parameters, and PHP includes a super global called get. It's just a $sign like your other variables that you set. But since it's a global or super global, it has an underscore and then in all caps get. But really, they're just called URL parameters. And when the URL browser request includes a query string, anything after the question mark, the super global get collection is created automatically. So this is a quick example of what that would look like. So you have your domain. If you're using MAMP or WAMP or XAMPP, sorry, you would see localhost and then the port number, and then if you have your file in a directory or something like that, you would see a directory, and then you can attach it. You can add this to anything, but with PHP, it will know that, hey, there's something dynamic about this URL. That's essentially what it looks like. And then just to break it down, the query is initiated with the question mark. So you have that question mark there, and then you automatically have a variable name, just like the way you set it in PHP file. But in this case, it's just the name of your variable. And then you have this equal sign, which you're letting the query string know that there's a value for this variable. And then the cool part about this is that you can have multiple variables, and all you need is this the and symbol or the ampersand thing to separate them out. Y'all seen this, right? Just some quick tips and also concepts for it is that the get method is restricted to send up to 1,024 characters only. So that means there's limitations there. What that means, just like if you're filling out creating a tweet or something, you have. Well, I think they extended it now, but there's a limitation of how many characters you can actually enter on the URL. Never use if you have a password or sensitive information to be sent out to the server. That's also a bad thing and bad practice. Don't put any sensitive data there. Oh, hectic anymore? It's not crazy anymore?
No, not. You could use post, right, instead of get?
Yes, yeah. And we'll go over the post right after that. But yeah. And then also get can't be used to send binary data, like an image or a Word document. That can't be transmitted through the URL. PHP provides that variable name is associative array to access all the set information using that get method. So just like last week when we talked about the associative arrays, when you create it, where you set a key and a value to your array, that's an associative array. That's essentially what PHP does for you automatically when you enter when you have a URL that has that information. Just a quick example. So if I have a variable named name and then it equals to mark, and I echo out using the super global get, and then just like if I had an associative array, I would call that the key there. In this case, is a variable name. Name. It will output the value. And then just to kind of reiterate that you can do multiple get variables there by separating it out with the and symbol. And that's just an example of what it'll print out. So that brings me to the post. So the post method is also one that you're going to greatly use, and when you're talking about that method, you can also think of HTTP requests. So when you hear or you read HTTP requests, it's normally talking about some kind of post method or post request that's happening. This will happen a lot with APIs. I mean, you're going to get and post, but with APIs, if it's typically it's like sensitive information, like submitting a credit card or for a payment or something like that, you're going to be doing post requests. So most forms use a post method for submissions, and again, PHP includes superglobal called post for that. Information sent from a form with the post method is invisible to others. All names, values are embedded within the body of the HTTP request, and this has no limits on the amount of information to send. So versus the get method, you have a character limit. Post, you can send as much information as you want. And then just like that says, it's invisible, so meaning the get method, everyone sees the URL, so it's public, it's visual. Here they can modify it. Post, it's possible to modify it, but you have to know your way around to doing that, and you can't see that information. You can also, or post supports binary data. Basically means you can upload files, so you can actually upload an image or a PDF file, Word document, any type of file you can upload. These are fun to create, but don't do these. They're already created. So it's one of the things like don't reinvent the wheel, guys. And then how it works is basically you within a HTML form, you're gonna have inputs in there, so people can enter their information. So in this example, it's a text input. That's the type parameter there, and then I have a name, so I'm naming the input, and then a value. So here I'm actually telling the form that I have a variable called name, and the type of variable is text, and I have a value set. So when I set a value, that means when you visually see this input, you're going to see the value there. But normally you don't. If you have a form like a contact form or a quantity field, so people can tell you how much I don't know, donuts they want to order or something like that, you wouldn't have a value set. That's where they would enter that information. But a value still exists, even though you don't see value equals and then whatever they're entering. While they're entering, the HTML form knows that there's a value set. And y'all have good experience with, I think you should have good experience with forms, right? A little bit. And I think you guys are probably more newer to have y'all messed with forms? No? Okay, so just like you saw variables, like we have different variable types. So you have the string text, you have the integer type. With forms, you can have text, you can have a number, you can have a select type of input. Basically means you can have options, so like that little drop down that you see on forms. You can have the type date, so basically you would know, or the browser would know, like, oh, this form wants you to select the date, so it'll know to populate a little calendar for you to select the date. So that's basically what the type references to. You don't, with the post request, you don't need the type. It's just really good once you receive it to know what type of information you're sending.
The value, wouldn't that be input by the user
Right.
after the fact?
Exactly. So yeah. So typically, when you're creating this, either value doesn't exist,
Okay.
right? You don't actually write it out in the HTML, or if you do, it's just an empty, right? The two quotes,
Just
the
two-
empty, yeah.
Okay.
And then yes, as soon as your user starts entering information, at
Mhm.
that moment, that HTML form knows that, hey, there's a value for it.
That
So
variable name would be filled with whatever the user input.
exactly. So yeah, so it's invisible in your HTML when you're developing,
Yeah, okay.
but the minute they start typing, that's when that value exists. You just don't see it.
So is that a good practice to do value equals quotes or no?
No, really, I wanted to show you, that way you see that there's a
Okay.
value set. But
That's
yeah,
fine,
but
yeah.
when you're creating it, you typically won't put a value. Yeah. But yeah, it's just more like to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then some FAQs about post requests. So the post method does not have any restriction on data size to be sent. That is, for the most part, true. But if you spin up your own server on like a DigitalOcean or Linode or some of these services, by default, those servers have a post request max limit. So let's say it's set up at let's just say it's set up at 5 megabytes or something like that. That means that if you have your form to upload a photo, it's going to max out and it won't let you submit anything. You're not going to get any information sent. But for like if you host with like a GoDaddy or HostGator or was it like Flywheel or right, is it Flywheel? Those typically, they already know that you're going to be submitting large amount of information, so they'll have probably like maybe, I don't know, like 50, 60 megabyte post max request or max limit or something like that. But the moment that you post something and you know you have this long form or something and then it's not going through, those are things that you should keep in mind, like, oh, there's probably a limit set by where you're hosting it. So whether it's on your computer, you can check the limitation on your computer, or in the hosting company. You can
And
ask
you
them.
would do that in the PHP setup.
Yes, PHP has, it's called php.ini,
Yeah.
and there it has all the rules. If you're hosting with a company that is a shared environment, so the cheaper the cost, if you have hosting that's like $5 a month or $3 a month, they're not gonna let you touch that file. But if you have your own server,
Or like the droplets,
right,
you could go in.
you have full control,
okay.
so you can max it out. Yeah, I mean you can get crazy with the max. But
Yeah, but that would be a great way for testing as opposed to doing it on your own server. Correct?
Yeah, it's definitely
as
really good.
To WAMP or MAP.
Right. Yeah, and also too, if there is a limit, you should. That's another thing I'm gonna cover in the course, to know how to create how to handle errors essentially. So the moment that does happen, you know how to tell the user, hey, I don't know what you entered. Maybe you copy paste it from Word, and Word gives you like this, all this crazy amount of text. It didn't go through, so they get this user-friendly message of there's an error, contact us or something like that. But they don't get this white screen of like, hey, I don't know what happened. That's really not great for a user to see. So that's the. So I can't say it's fairly true that there's no limit. Potentially there's no limit, but your server also has a lot to do with that. And then the post method can be used to send binary data, like we mentioned. You can upload photos and pictures. The data sent by post method goes through HTTP header, so security depends on HTTP protocol. By using secure HTTP, you can make sure that the information is secure. Essentially what I'm saying is, if you have an SSL certificate installed, which you should, from any website you build, whether your own or for a client, definitely have an SSL certificate installed. They're free now, so you don't have to pay $200, $100 a year, which typically would be, and make sure your sites are all secure. So when you submit a form, all that information is basically secure in the transmission, and then also to browsers now, what they're doing is while you're filling out a form, it'll actually tell the user, hey, this page is insecure. We don't recommend you submitting this kind of information. So like a login page or a donation page or something like that. So make sure all your sites. That's the good thing now that the SSL certificates are free. PHP provides a post associative array, tags as information. So the same thing. It has an associative array to get that information that's posted. So this is a quick example. So I have a form. So I open up HTML tag, just form, and I'm setting the method to post. So I'm saying method equals post. And then I have, I guess I should put paragraph tags, but I'm saying name, and then I have my input there. I set a type of text, and I'm setting the variable name called name, which doesn't sound good, but I'm just getting the name. And then I'm asking for an age, so I'm saying input type text. There I could have done also number or something like that. And then the name of that input, I'm saying age, so I'm labeling the variable age. And then you always need a submit button, whether it's an input or it's a button. You can change the style of it. It doesn't always have to look the way the browser shows us the submit button. But the way you do that is input type equals submit. And the form, browsers automatically know that this submit input or submit button will submit whatever the user entered. So if I entered Mark in the name and I put 25 and I hit submit, it will do what it's supposed to do. Now once that information is submitted on the PHP side, now I have information for the post. So just like you saw the get super global, now I can call the post. That's that first line there in the PHP section. So I can say, there's my condition that says if, and then $_post, and then as an associative array, I'm calling the key name. That's what I called my variable name at the top. And then the condition type, there's the two those pipelines there, and that's basically the or condition there. So I'm saying if post name or I have data for the post age, that's my condition, then do this. Do you know why I had put a condition there?
The condition being the or, right?
Well, just in general, like the if, but yes.
Oh,
If, but yeah,
you're saying
if you know or, and also I would like to know or, yeah.
So it's saying, as long as someone submits one of those things, then you can echo whatever that is.
That way, if it's empty, then it doesn't do it.
Exactly. If we have information to do whatever right now I'm echoing it out, yeah, so it shows it. And then why do I have the or? Like the or.
You can do one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
If one is done, but like say you put name, not an age, it'll still run.
Yeah, because if I just do one and not the other, then if they enter the other one and I didn't do the condition right, then it won't run, right? This block of code inside my condition won't run because I didn't specify, if either one of these are good. I could also say two and symbols, in other words, saying and. So I actually want both fields filled out, then run this code. So that's another type of condition I could have stated.
So now on that one, if they submitted, their name, so you put welcome Mark, then you put an age, would you say welcome Mark, you are years old?
Mm-hmm. No. Exactly.
You have to get more
Specific.
specific.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
You could do two if statements. Like
You
if
could do two if
name,
statements. Yeah.
then welcome, and then if age, then age.
Yes. And then separate them out that way. Yep. Yeah, those are all fair ways to do it. I mean, there's never a right or wrong way of doing it. I think it just depends on who you work with. So if it's just you, it really doesn't matter as long as it works. that's what ultimately matters. But if you do, like, if you write two conditions there, and your team understands that, like, hey, this is how it's set up, then you guys should be good. There should be no problem. So that's the whole communication thing. When you're working with the people, just make sure you are good with how you write these things and everybody understands them. That way things don't get lost. So, I mean, right now it's two variables, but typically a form might have, I just did a job application form for Bill Miller, and it's like, so it can get like insane how many values that you're looking for. Oh, well, y'all have any questions on get or post?
So when would you use get?
Get is really great for example, like email campaigns. That's just one. I mean, there's more reasons, but like if you had an email campaign, or for example, well, let's just say the email campaign. You have this like list of emails. You have first name, last name, and email, or something like that, and then you blast everybody out. Like hundreds of people, this nice looking email, and it says enter your chance to win, or something like that, right? So of course, you don't want just anybody having this this URL essentially to be copy and pasted. So it's personalized, right? Everybody received their email specifically. It says hi, Jim, and it's personalized. It has this big button like enter to win, X contest or something. So once you click on that link, let's say that had URL variables on it. When they click on it, or when Jim clicks on it, he's going to go and see something like this, right? So it's going to have name and maybe his email, or maybe not, maybe just his name. Let's just say it's just his name. Once it gets there, I can use that information to see. So like I can know that you clicked on the link. That's one way. I can know that how to display your name. So now not only is your email personalized, but also the website. So you're like, whoa, like I'm seeing my name again. So that's one way of doing it. The other ways are essentially non-sensitive data. Like that's to me, I feel like that's really the big key. When there's non-sensitive data to be transmitted, that's when you shouldn't. Also, use get if you need something quick and you need something fast to make something dynamic. So another example is like if you have a page and you want a user to click on, I don't know how to say it, like kind of, I don't know what those quizzes are. What are those quizzes that you take?
Like,
what is that big site?
Gonna get married, BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed, yes, exactly. BuzzFeed, like yes. So you go through this quiz and it tells you, oh, you're this character from this cartoon or something like that, and you want to share it. So instead of like storing that data in a database and all that, you have all this information that this person filled out. So when they share it, you can actually customize what that picture looks like. You'll see like Judy is Homer Simpson or something. I don't know, whatever, right? And you see Homer Simpson and you see Judy in the picture. You can do that. You can generate that image with Judy's name on it, and what output she got from the quiz just by that
All
get
that
method.
information's in the URL.
So
Yes.
it's kind of like parameters, for example.
Right.
Like
URL
when
parameters.
when you go to YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're gonna embed something,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like question mark, like whatever, like equals 1, which means like show the play button.
True. Yes.
Yeah, true.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Or if you want to customize it, so like maybe you wanted the play button not to show. I don't know if they allow that or not.
then you put
Maybe they have a setting in the URL that you can customize it. I mean, they probably have a user interface where you like customize it and you don't see the URL, but then it outputs an HTML block of code with those parameters in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like Google it.
Google Maps.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has the coordinates in there. It has
That's
yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
another
Very
good-
long.
At least you can. So it's like a shareable
Yes. Yeah, it's this shareable. So
Okay.
all these things, I didn't need to create a database. I didn't need to connect with anything. I didn't need to connect with an API or anything. This is just a URL that, to the regular user, they don't know the difference. They're just like, does this link work, right? That's all they care about. Now, if you're looking at like what makes a URL look pretty and all that stuff, you can actually use that same URL. So it's like this long URL, and then they have tools where they minimize it or they shrink it. So they call it, I think, tiny URLs, and essentially, I think Facebook or something is like fb.com / and then just like 5 random numbers in text. That right there, they know that this long URL with all these variables, when you visit it, when you visit this like small URL, it knows to convert to that. So you end up at this, but at the beginning it minified it or something like that. If you care about how it looks, but no one really cares as long as it works. That's really, and usually people are going to be clicking on it. If it's an email, if you're sending out an email, typically you don't want to see this long URL. You want like a nice looking button, and whatever the link is, however long it is, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't. But and then of course post is the opposite of that. There's probably a database behind it, and it's not dynamic without you actually making a post request to it.
And that's something like user information, username, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can use it for simple things, but yes, the typical reason is like submitting some kind of, I guess, personalized form or sensitive, like passwords. Passwords especially should never be through a get. Like don't do that. And then sessions with, I guess you could think of them like cookies or just ways browsers store information, but they're not. But PHP sessions are not cookies. So sessions in a way is to store information and be used across multiple pages. Same thing like get and post. PHP includes a super global called session. So it's $_session. So it's just to store information. Session variable store user information to be used across multiple pages. Example, username, favorite color. By default, session variables last until the user closes the browser. Session variables hold information about one single user and are available to all pages in one application. So if you set up sessions in your application, it only applies to the user that it visits your application. The information that is stored there is only for them and not everybody else. What they see is what they see, not everybody else. To start a session is basically doing this script called session_start and then wrap, or just 2 open close parentheses. That's how you start it. So just like you create your own functions and you call them out this way, that's how you call out PHP session to initiate. One thing to know about that is that it must be the very first thing in your document before the HTML tags. If you put this code after the HTML tag, it won't run. Or if you don't put it at all, it also won't run. So if you're trying out sessions and it's not working, make sure that you're running it before the HTML tag. To set a session variable is just like you've done with associative arrays, except we're using the super global, which is $_session, and then you can state the variable name. So in this case, I'm saying name, and I'm setting a value to Mark, and then same thing, like the next one is age equals 35. So there I'm setting a variable with the value. The value can be anything. It could be empty if you want, or null.
So if you're creating a session and I guess wouldn't it be like when you log in or something, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, typically it's when you authenticate and you want your session. Like now that you're authenticated, you want the browser to know that you're authenticate, you have to relog in again, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be also preference. So I don't know, like let's say you build this, like the application you're talking about
That's what
where
I'm thinking about.
you're setting a favorite of
I
who you
could
are. Or something.
select, or they could input their party of choice on the first page,
Yep.
and then I could carry that information throughout the rest of the site.
Exactly, and that all allows you without them having to sign up to anything.
Yeah.
So he just set a value to something and then use it across. So if they refresh the page and they keep linking around, they'll be able to see whatever they entered the first time. Yeah.
So you require, so like, okay, say it's an input like that, so you would just do session name empty, right?
Mhm.
And then when they enter it, it would fill that.
Wait, you're talking about like a regular input, like a.
Yeah, like for his thing,
Mhm.
it's like select your party.
Right.
So you would be like session party.
Right.
Empty.
So there's two ways he can get that value. So PHP automatically doesn't know what you've entered until it gets it. So let's say there's a button. Let's just say there's two parties, right? So there's two buttons, right? There's several ways you can do this. You can either do a get method. So in other words, each button will take you to a page that says question mark party equals and then the value, right? They're two different buttons. They have two different values. Once it goes to that page with that information, then it has to refresh, right? It doesn't happen automatically. But once it goes to that URL, then you can call a get method here. So session party equals $ get party. So I should probably get it right. But yeah, so that's one way of telling from one place to PHP with session, like this is the value I want to set. The other way is more, it doesn't really make sense in this case, but if he did the post, what if he had a form that had, someone to select which party they want to select, and that's transmitted through the post method. You wouldn't see in the URL, but rather when it goes to the next page, you could say session party equals $post party, or whatever you call it in the form. So whether you use post or get, some way we need to this part needs to know where it's coming from. Yeah. But then once that's there, once it knows that there's a value for that, then you would put it on the other end. Does that make sense?
Is that kind of like also what you would use? Let's say you're creating like a sign-up form for your website,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone, their name, their email, whatever, and then you have like your password must have this, and they enter something that's not that. So some sites I know, if you mess something up, it just deletes all the stuff you entered, and then some of them keeps it. Is that what that would be for?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you want it, let's just say maybe not the password, but maybe maybe your sign up page is multiple pages, right? Like let's say it's like instead of having 100 form or 100 input form in one page, you want to split it up in pages, which I totally recommend you do. And one of those fields you want, let's say their name, you wanted to keep displaying it in every page as they enter it, you would definitely use session to know. So on the next page they're in, you have that information. Yeah. So every time they refresh, they don't lose any of that information. Also, the previous information that they entered is also being tracked. They don't see it, but when they go back to the previous page, it'll show what they previously entered. Yep. Yep. And then to use it, it's just like you use with the variable. So you can just call. So earlier we set the session variable to, in this case, Mark, and then 35. And then I can also echo or do whatever I want with that information. So there I'm just printing it to the page. So I'm saying the person's name and their age. I think I have some examples. Yeah. So that's just the same example, just print it out. So there I'm starting the session before the HTML tag. I'm setting the session variable name. with the value, and then I'm using the session there as an example. But I don't have to echo it out. I can do whatever I want with it. I could submit it in a database. I can add the age number with something else if I had a math function or something like that. I can create an image of this, I don't know. And then to destroy a PHP session, you can just use session underscore unset, just like a function would run. And then ultimately you can run session destroy. So session unset will just remove all the session variables, and then to destroy the session, you would say session destroy. That's just an easy way of unsetting everything and deleting everything.
And where would you put that?
Maybe a logout. So when they log out, you want it to completely forget who, what authentication you did, or maybe you have these preferences set in there, and then you're like, I want to go back to where we're, maybe you have a reset button they can click on, and then it'll remove all. I mean, they just chose what party, but maybe it's other things that they also chose.
So, what about a time? So, like, how you said when you close the browser,
Mm-hmm.
it'll forget all that information?
By default, but you can also set like a time limit. So the ones that I've worked with normally are, I think they last for like I think like either a week or something like that, like something like crazy long, maybe a few days. But yeah, you can definitely play around with the expiration. The same thing like a cookie. A cookie, you can set an expiration date to it. So that means so they leave, so like they're filling out this 3-page form, they can be in the middle of it and they need to do something else. They can close the browser, and then when they come back, they're back where they were. It's great when your computer shuts down and the power or something like that. It's very helpful. And then the cool thing about this is if you're using session, you don't need a database for it. It seems very dynamic because you can do anything you want with that information, but it's not stored in a database anywhere. It's just in the user's browser, and that's something that you can let the user know. So I don't know if the trend now when you go visit a website, they put this big alert like, hey, we're tracking this, we're tracking that, and then you're just trying to find the X to close out because you don't really care. But that's essentially what they're saying, like, hey, we're doing all this information, we're doing all these things with your information. So that's one thing that you can let your users know, like, hey, we're not tracking anything. This is all on your computer. They might not believe that. I know I wouldn't. But
if it's a variable, it's not on their computer, is it? Because the PHP is run
It's in the browser.
Is it in the browser?
the session is stored in the browser.
Okay.
Okay. But the server knows how to interact with it. Same like the way the cookies work.
I know. Yeah, I know how cookies work.
Yes.
So it's similar.
Very similar. Yeah.
Except cookies are more permanent than a session.
Well, you can set same thing there. You can set an expiration date to a cookie.
No, I realize that, but cookies are usually used more long term.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that somebody can close out,
Yes.
reopen.
Yeah.
And this is much more short term.
Most of the time, yeah, they're typically used for short term. If the sessions needed to be long term,
You should use a cookie.
You should use it. Well, you should use a cookie, or you should use a database to store
just
it.
store it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the assignment that is on the repository should have the get and post there. I think it's labeled weird in the numbering, like the titles of the topics within that assignment. But I can go over it with y'all. But basically, what I want you to go through is kind of test around the get method, and then also creating a form.